Centuries before Columbus set sail, before the pilgrims dreamed of a new world. Strangers from a frozen northern land crossed the ocean and stood right here, at the edge of a continent no one in Europe even knew existed. They built homes from timber and turf, forged iron in the biting cold, and watched strange new stars from a sky untouched by maps. For a brief moment, they claimed this wild frontier, and then, just as suddenly as they arrived, they vanished. No battles recorded, no graves found, no trace of why they came or why they left. Only whispers buried in the wind and legends that refused to die. Some say it was myth, others a ghost story told by sailors. But what if those myths were true? What if the first Europeans to reach the Americas came not with flags or crosses, but with axes, shields, and sagas? This is the forgotten edge of the world. And this is the story of aux Meadows, the Viking settlement that vanished. It started with a rumor, a few grassy mounds on the wild coast of Newfoundland that locals thought were nothing. But when Norwegian explorer Helge Ingstad set foot there in 1960, something in the shape of those hills whispered of an ancient hand. He called his wife, archaeologist Stine Ingstad, and together they began to dig. What they unearthed shattered history. The outlines of longhouses buried in the soil, a forge blackened by fire, iron nails, a bronze pin, and a woman's spindle whirl. Artifacts from a world that shouldn't have been here. For nearly 1,000 years, the Vinland Sagas were dismissed as legend, tales of Norsemen who crossed an endless sea to a place they called Vinland. But now, the legends had become proof. On that windswept coast, the Ingstads uncovered the first European settlement in the Americas, a Viking outpost hidden for a millennium beneath the moss. History trembled that day. The world suddenly had to ask, what drove the Vikings this far? And why did they vanish from the edge of the world they discovered? Around the year 1000 AD, when most of Europe still feared the ocean's edge, the Norse were already chasing the horizon. From the icy fjords of Greenland and Iceland, they launched sleek wooden ships, long, narrow vessels that sliced through waves like blades of oak and iron. Their leader, Leif Erikson, son of the infamous Eric the Red, sought a land whispered about in the sagas, a place of forests, meadows, and fruit, unlike anything in the frozen north. They called it Vinland. Guided by sunstones and stars, Leif and his crew sailed into the unknown, past glaciers, past storm-torn seas, until the cold blue gave way to the rocky green shores of what we now call Newfoundland. Here, they found fresh timber for ship repair, wild berries for wine, and game for survival. The land was rich, but silent, alien, a continent untouched by Norse feet, and far from the safety of home. So they built longhouses of wood and sod, hearths that glowed in the endless northern night. They forged iron, mended their ships, and named this place Vinland the Good. For the first time, Europeans stood on the soil of the Americas, not by accident, but by daring. But while they called it Vinland, it was also a land that belonged to others. And the meeting of these two worlds would soon turn from wonder to blood. For a short, shining moment, Vinland lived. The Norse raised longhouses on the wild coast, forged iron, hunted, and fished, turning a desolate shore into a living outpost. Archaeology would later reveal 8 turf-walled buildings and tools used by both men and women. This wasn't a raid, it was a settlement. The sagas spoke of mild winters, tall trees, and sweet grapes. But reality was harsher. Storms battered the coast, Food waned, and from the forest came the watching eyes of the Skraelings. Curiosity gave way to fear. Still, the Norse endured for a few brief years, their fires glowing against the dark Atlantic. They had crossed an ocean and built the first European home in the Americas. But their triumph was already fading into legend. The first tensions came quietly, a shadow on the edge of the forest, a sound carried by the wind. At first, the Norse and the Skraelings watched one another with curiosity. Trade followed. Red cloth, iron nails, milk, and furs changing hands across the gulf of language. For a brief time, peace held. But one small misunderstanding shattered it. The sagas tell of panic, of shouts, stones, and arrows in the air. The Norse, caught off guard and far from home, fought to survive. Blood was spilled on the same soil they had once called their promised land. The dream of Vinland began to die. Winters grew longer, food scarcer, tempers colder. The winds off the Atlantic turned cruel, and the distance to Greenland suddenly felt endless. So they left, quietly, hurriedly, leaving behind their tools, their homes, their hope. The longhouses sank into the earth, the forest reclaimed their hearts, and time did the rest. For 1,000 years, the land kept its silence. Only the wind remembered the strangers who came from across the sea and vanished. For centuries, the Vinland Sagas were dismissed as legend, tales too wild to be true. But when the Ingstads uncovered those buried halls in Newfoundland, the earth revealed its secret. The Vikings had reached America 5 centuries before Columbus. Still, mystery lingers. Was aux Meadows truly Leif Erikson's Vinland, or just one outpost of a greater journey lost to time? No one knows. The site remains quiet, the sea still roaring, the grass still whispering over the ruins where iron once burned. Long before Columbus, long before the colonies, they were here, and the land never forgot.